And with so a very, very warm welcome to everybody who is joining us today for our Live Well Live session. We have a specialist session today looking at the premise of ADHD and weight loss. And this has been brought to you as we have been asked about this subject several times. So we thought it might be helpful to do a very specialist webinar. I am Ruth Taylor. I'm the nutritionist with Boots Online Doctor and also a registered nurse, and really have been part of the lifestyle medicine team at Boots Online Doctor since we first started operating, which is now around 4 years ago. We love bringing these webinars to you, and really it's your opportunity to bring any of your weight loss orientated questions or anything you would like to ask. If you have something which is very medical related to your health, we are very likely to redirect you to your healthcare provider. But please ask if you're confused or if you have something that you'd like to know and you think we can help, please do ask. If it's outside the scope of what we can safely answer on a webinar, we will just let you know. You can ask questions by posting them into the Q&A box. You will find that at the bottom of your screen. That's the best place to put them simply because we can find them a little bit more easily there. But if you can't find that, please pop them in the chat box and we'll have a look for them. We're going to start by giving you a slide share as usual, and then we will come to your questions. And I'm going to hand over and say a very, very warm welcome to you, Natasha. It's your first time joining us on one of our Live Our Live webinars, and you are part of the ADHD team here at Boots Online Doctor. So do say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself. We're thrilled to have you with us. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Ruth. It's really nice to be here and to be joining this webinar. So I'm a mental health nurse by background, and I've been an ADHD nurse prescriber for the last few years now. It's an area of work that I really, really enjoy. Tends to be really rewarding, and very interesting too. So I'm looking forward to seeing your questions actually, and seeing if
Yeah.
we can help with those.
Brilliant. That's really great. And we're joined, thanks, Natasha. That's great. And it's great to hear you've got so much experience. You've been part of the Boots Online Doctor team for a few months now, I believe, haven't you?
Hmm.
So, yeah,
Yes, that's right.
brilliant. And we're joined also, thank you, Raman is here helping us with all IT queries or blips that we come across, which we unfortunately do seem to hit every now and then. So do say hi in the chat box. We are going to start by, we've got a couple of polls that we will share with you across the webinar. They're completely anonymous. A very warm welcome if you're joining us for the first time or if you're someone who's been back before or here before and are back again. Very warm welcome. So why are we talking about ADHD and weight in relation to weight loss? And I guess it's because I guess there's so much additional information now in the wider world about the impact of ADHD and also how we can miss this as a diagnosis in someone's life or in how they present in the world. And I think it's such an important subject, not one that I'm a specialist in, which is why we've got Natasha here with us today. But we know that ADHD is one of the key factors can influence self-regulation and motivation, and also has quite a big impact on our brain's reward pathways. We know that people who actually have got ADHD, whether that's something that has been diagnosed or whether it's just something that you believe is part of your makeup, are more likely to experience challenges with managing their weight. And we also know that when you are overweight or obese, that you might have increasing symptoms associated with your ADHD. So it's a bi-directional relationship. It's something that can really, really have quite an impact in both ways. And really, I think what we want to let you know and for you to understand from today is that this isn't anything to do with your willpower. It's about your brain, it's about your reward systems, and it's about routines. And what we know from reading the research and from having Natasha with us today is that ADHD can make eating patterns quite irregular, and it can worsen your ability to concentrate, and it can have quite an impact on fatigue and concentration. So we really know that this is such an important subject. We've just asked you where you are in terms of your weight loss journey because this is something that's really important for us to know so that when we answer your questions, we are directing the answers to you appropriately. So I can see we've got quite a mixed audience here today. And again, this is completely anonymous and it just helps us to know what's going on for you You're sort of like the bulk of people here are midway through their weight loss journey. So that's a time where actually that concentration and focus becomes really important because we've lost that initial motivation sometimes. We've got about 35% of you who are just starting out, and we've got around sort of 15, 16% of you are in your maintenance phase. So thank you to all of you for letting us know that. It's really helpful for us to understand what's going on for you in terms of your phase of your weight loss journeys. And we want to support you on all of those phases. So that's really helpful to us. So, Natasha, I'm going to hand over to you to think about what's going on here, the biological pathways.
Yes, so the shared biological pathways. The ADHD brain seeks stimulation and instant feedback. That's just due to it being a bit understimulated on the whole. So high sugar, high fat foods can trigger dopamine in a similar way, and in that way they become extremely rewarding and very, very difficult to resist. Chronic inflammation from excess weight can disrupt attention and mood regulation. And both ADHD and obesity increase risk of poor sleep, which affects hunger hormones and impulse control.
Yes, that's quite a lot to take in one sort of like thinking. And actually, it might be the first time that people have actually had the opportunity to think that there might be a relationship between this sort of mood-related um, mental health condition and their weight. So I think it's really
Mm.
important. So what's your experience of that in terms of seeing people who are in this situation? Is this something that is really problematical, or is it something that we can overcome? I think we're going to look at that, aren't we?
Yeah, so think about that a bit more as we go along. But yes, it's very, very common. People do seem to struggle with managing regular food intake. Yeah, it can be really quite tricky.
Okay, it's really helpful to get your perspective. So you're going to tell us a little bit more about the common behavioural patterns, and then we're going to ask, we've got a poll to talk to you about as well, I think.
Okay, so behavioral patterns commonly seen include skipping meals or irregular eating due to inattention. So that might be that people forget to eat because they come.
Oh, what's happened here?
Paying attention to the right thing. Can you hear me all right?
Well, I lost you for a minute there, so I'm not sure if everyone else did. Did
Oh,
anyone lose your sound? Can somebody just let us know in the chat box whether we lost Natasha's sound? I, okay, people can hear you, so let's carry on. It might have just been me. Thank you.
okay, great. Nice to know that people can hear me. So yes, so being able to pay attention to the right thing is the issue very often. So sometimes that can lead to getting very, very hungry by the end of the day and sort of overeating then. And then sort of feeling bad about it sometimes. So we can also see that people have emotional binge eating during stress or fatigue as well, evening cravings and grazing, and difficulty maintaining exercise consistency. So just managing those general routines, people really struggle with procrastination a lot of the time in ADHD. So being able to sort of get started with planning meals and shopping, all those things can be really difficult. And also just having the impetus to get into the gym or go for a walk or whatever it is you feel like you should be doing. Um, so lots of things going on really that can make these sort of patterns quite challenging to manage. Sometimes all or nothing thinking, leading to cycles of restriction and overeating. So sometimes, unfortunately, this can lead to eating disorders, we know. So there are links between ADHD and eating disorders. And it's cycles of can be restriction or it can be sort of triggered by that forgetting to eat and then overeating later and then trying to make up for that afterwards by eating less again. So it can just start up quite an unhealthy cycle.
Yeah, that can be quite challenging context. I think it's really, really helpful to bring our attention to that. Thank you. And I think one of the things I often think about is, it could be an eating disorder, but it could also be as simple as disordered eating. So it could be that actually just getting some semblance of a pattern or just following a really simple routine might help you step away from that whole sort of cycle. But
Mm.
I don't want to undermine it. I think it's different for everyone, and I think for everyone here today, if this is relevant to you, it will be different for each and every one of you. We're just sharing a quick poll here to see what you find most challenging. There are no right or wrong answers. This is completely anonymous. It's really just so that we understand how this might be affecting you, how your sort of ability to maybe be organized, or whether you're getting a lot of cravings or whether you're having problems with sleep. We can maybe speak about the things that are the key things that are generally popping up. And actually, I can see for the sort of the answers that we've given you to think about, it's quite a split, I guess, for the majority, and it's a very small margin. So about 30% of people who've answered, which is about 75% of the audience, managing emotional stress eating is probably the most significant issue that people are recognizing. But cravings are way up there as well as that sort of ability to eat regularly. So, and then the quality sleep is creeping up as well. So I can see actually it's above the board. It's sort of like all of those factors are relevant. So it's sort of maybe we'll think about how we can talk to those points. And if there's anything that we've suggested and you're not sure what to do about those things that you're struggling with, and we don't cover them in the slides, and you'd like some help or support, then do ask in the Q&A section because we'll try and give you some guidance around those things. But thank you for taking the moment to fill that in. It's helpful for us to understand what's going on for you, I think, because we want to make this really relevant to you. Yeah, talking of sleep. So, sleep is sort of one of the core things that helps our whole body clock work. So, we have this body clock called the circadian rhythm, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago in one of our webinars. So we know that sleep is one of the key components that can be quite problematical for people if they are experiencing ADHD, or if they have a diagnosis of ADHD. And sleep can be something, insomnia can be quite a big problem. But also, the link between ADHD and sleep and weight management is absolutely crucial to be thinking about as well. So it's not about putting yourself under more stress, it's just understanding that there are links between all of these factors. What we know about poor sleep is when we sleep less, our hunger hormones change quite dramatically. So our hunger increases and our level of satisfaction when we eat food decreases. So ghrelin, our hunger hormone, increases, and leptin, our satiety hormone, decreases. So many people who have ADHD are in the research reported to be night owls, people who tend to be awake later in the day, maybe eat later in the day. And from all of the research that we've looked at around that whole circadian rhythm, we know that we're more prone to weight gain if we eat the vast majority of our calories later in the day. It seems to be that we are better genetically set up to be a healthy weight if we eat more significantly a higher proportion of our calories earlier in the day. So this can be quite a problem. And also, if we're not having a steady sleep routine, our appetite control can be really impacted adversely. We do have a whole sleep webinar. So if this is something that affects you and you want to put some attention to what you might be able to do to make a difference, then do have a look at the replay. Raman, I don't know if you can share the link to the replay for the sleep webinar, or go through to our YouTube account where we've got the replays for the webinars. But I think this is quite crucial. And from your poll responses, I can see that quite a few of you were having problems, sort of identified sleep as one of those key factors. But I can also see that, Carol, you said more or less everything is relevant for you. So I think that may be true for a few people. So thank you for letting us know that as well. Okay, so this whole biological feedback loop that we thought would be helpful to talk about. So one of the things that we think about in this whole lifestyle medicine world is this word inflammation. And I think it's becoming a little bit more mainstream in terms of thinking about what is inflammation and what do we mean when we talk about inflammation in terms of our overall health. quite often when we think of inflammation, we're talking about things, or we think that we're thinking about things like inflammatory bowel disease or arthritis. But in the context of weight management, we're talking about inflammation as something that is just happening in the body in a low level impact. So what that is doing is affecting your body's ability to be sensitive to insulin, and it's affecting your whole metabolism potentially. So, factors that can create this sort of low grade inflammation are things like stress. It can be chronic pain. It could be that your diet is rich in foods that create inflammation in your body. And it can really affect our mood, our sleep, our appetite, our cravings. So, this is why thinking about what's going on biologically can be really helpful, because I think if we understand the biological impact of these factors, it can help us understand why it's important to put some attention to them. So, stress creates this whole fight or flight system in our body. And so that can increase our level of the stress hormone cortisol, and higher consistent levels of cortisol can be a triggering element for a sort of greater level of low grade inflammation in our body. Again, has a very similar mechanism. Our body will perceive pain, we will feel it, but actually, from a physical point of view, we will have a physiological response to pain, and that would be that we would also have high levels of those stress hormones floating around. Again, we would have sort of a high level of cortisol. When we have high levels of cortisol, we can have high levels of insulin. So that whole situation can make it harder for us to lose weight or to stay at a healthy weight. We also know when people have got extra weight on their bodies or they're carrying extra weight, that also is an inflammatory situation. So the whole thing keeps snowballing. As you can see, it's quite a big impact. Again, if we have poor sleep regularly, or imbalances in our blood sugar, we might notice that we're getting those cravings, or we're getting really hungry in the evening, or we're just desperate to eat a lot of the time, or we're not feeling that sense of fullness. That can be a sign that we have some blood sugar imbalances going on. So all of that creates an inflammatory situation within our body, but it also can create an inflammatory situation in our brain. And this can affect how well that reward mechanism, our dopamine mechanism, works in our body. We can end up feeling less motivated. We can have more impulses to eat, and we can also feel a little bit more un unhappy to actually be moving. So it's actually just really has quite a big impact. We can feel a little bit more like we just are happier just being a little bit less active. So it affects our attention, affects our mood, and affects our cravings. So we're going to talk about what to do about all of these things. So don't be alarmed. I just think it's really helpful to bring your attention to what might be going on in that sort of physiological sense, because it really is important. And I can see somebody's asking which foods are creating inflammation, or the ones that we know most likely to. So we'll pick that up in a minute. Tasha, over to you.
Hey, so just going to talk a little bit about ADHD medications and weight management. So we normally do prescribe stimulants for ADHD, and we already talked a little bit about the brain being a bit understimulated. So what we do is we try to top up that level of stimulation, and that should make food cravings and the like diminish quite significantly. Food becomes a bit less rewarding, and often it becomes a bit easier to manage routines as well. People often tell me that they've been able to sort of plan better, thinking ahead a bit more, and just to make healthy choices on the whole. So stimulants will reduce appetite initially. It does tend to sort of improve a bit over time. We do adjust the lengths of time that these medications work during the day to try and sort of work around, how people are managing with their diet. Weight does tend to stabilize after several months. I think we're a bit more concerned normally about weight with children than we are for adults. I think on the whole, adults often tell me that it's a really helpful benefit to taking these medicines. So yes, we said focus and planning can improve, which indirectly supports weight management. So that's the stimulants. And then we also have non-stimulant, but still is somewhat stimulating because it's still increasing levels of noradrenaline, has less impact on appetite, and may reduce emotional eating by improving regulation and impulse control. So hopefully that keeps people sort of feeling a bit more steady, and it should be a bit easier to manage on a daily basis. So yeah, generally treatment for ADHD is really quite helpful for this issue, and we do know that it's definitely part of having ADHD, this sort of tendency to overeat for many different reasons, actually.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? And I think it's really helpful just to acknowledge that that's part of the picture. We thought we would just touch on, we've got a great big helicopter flying and literally past my window, so quite distracting. Um, so we thought it might be helpful to think about the impact of GLP-1 treatments, which also we know can affect appetite quite significantly. So we know that if you're taking an ADHD medication and you also take a GLP-1 medication such as Manjaro or Wegovy, you might find that your appetite will drop quite significantly. So in that case, we really want you to focus on making sure that you are eating small amounts of nutritious foods and staying hydrated. We would really be wanting you to be thinking about where your protein is coming from, because we know that protein is really helpful for balancing mood, but also for muscle health. And these are the key things that we want to be thinking about in this whole weight loss arena, really. So we could share our protein foods document, Raman, if anybody would like that. So just think about this because it's sort of like really important. And if you're really struggling with your appetite, then we would, and you're a patient of the Boots Online Doctor Service, please do send us a message on your messaging service. And if you're a doctor, a patient of anywhere else that you're getting a medication from, please just get in touch with them. Nobody wants you to have such suppressed appetite that you're finding it difficult to eat. And it's really important that we're managing your doses so that you are able to eat, even if it's small meals regularly. We want you to be able to do that. That's sort of a crucial element for your long-term health, really, and for your long-term sort of like energy is such an important factor. We forget. So, thinking about what are those key nutritional approaches to support yourself if you have got ADHD, then actually, what we've looked at, the literature suggests that the Mediterranean style of eating is a really healthful way that can support brain health. So, this is really important. It's sort of like focusing on those really healthy fats. And sometimes when I talk on a one-to-one basis with people about Mediterranean diet, they get quite excited because they think that means they can eat lovely breads and pastas with oils. I definitely have the oils, but I'd be holding back on those pastas too much because if you are wanting to lose weight, then you would want to be having those in a moderate amount. But the things that you want to be thinking about eating are the colourful vegetables, getting variety of those vegetables on your plate, bringing in those oily fish from foods, just thinking about the salmons, the mackerels, the sardines, maybe thinking about the quality of those. Maybe if you're somebody who doesn't like them, you might want to think about whether a supplement might help. Minimizing the sort of ultra processed foods that can really sort of lead to dopamine boosts and crashes can really help in the long run. It can be hard initially to step away from those dopamine boosting foods because you're used to the sort of like roller coaster that they're giving you, or the spike, or the beneficial effects. But what we know is long term, if you're constantly eating those, your mood regulation can really shift and change. So we want to be thinking about making gradual change and bringing those processed foods out slowly, maybe just making one small change at a time. And then in terms of balancing your energy, we want you to be thinking about, getting rid of the cravings. People are talking about cravings as one of the key things that they're struggling with. So balancing your blood sugar is really important. So we could share our sort of meal builder ideas document, which would be potentially helpful to be thinking about. you want to be eating maybe 2 or 3 meals a day. And if you're really hungry in the evening, maybe think about a mindful snack around 5 in the evening to stop you leaning into the sort of like snacking pattern that you might get into. So almost have breakfast, lunch, a 4 or 5 o'clock snack, and then some dinner around 6, 7-ish. And doing that routinely might really help. And it's about getting into a routine. And for anybody who's in that maintenance phase, this is just as relevant and just as important. We want you to keep that steady energy as much as you possibly can because that it will keep you in the sort of weight range that you want to stay within. And it's really not complicated. The other aspect of this is to think about hydration as well, because we know that staying adequately hydrated can really also help with those cravings and to keep your blood sugars balanced. So the lifestyle pillars, I think, are really important to be thinking about for everyone, wherever you are on your weight loss journeys. And it's going to be quite challenging to maintain. So I would say think about each of these pillars that are on this slide and think where you are and if anything is doing you're doing well with, or if there's any aspects that perhaps you would like to put a little bit of attention to. We always recommend generally that we just start with one thing. So, and when we make a change, we always recommend that we start with the one change that we're going to find the easiest to make. And I think that's just as true for everyone who's here today as for anyone else. We can overwhelm ourselves by trying to do the really complicated things. But if we choose a change that's easy, say for example, you want to start practicing mindful eating and getting into routine, and you think that's a really simple step for you to take, just start there. If you've got a couple of other things to be working on, just start with the one thing that is easy. Or if you're somebody who really needs to work on self-compassion, and that's the thing that's really holding you back from achieving your goals, then start there. I know it sounds simple, but we know it's not simple, which is why it's really important to talk about. So do whichever of these resonates most with you. Maybe make a list of the areas that you want to put some focus into and think about where would be easiest for you to start, because it's really important to just look after yourself in all of that process of change. So, do you agree with that, Natasha?
Yes, definitely. I do think that routine is really important, like you've been talking about, and it can really support people to manage their ADHD. And I like that you've put something in there about having a buddy as well. So often other people giving
Yeah.
prompts and supporting with getting those routines in place can be really, really helpful. And giving some reminders as well. So there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, very much so. So that whole mindset and motivation. So it's just really important, not to feel like you're overwhelming yourself, not to have a sense of failure, but to just be sitting and recognizing that you're making progress, I think. And that self-compassion, being kind to ourselves, is really important, isn't it? And like the consistency really can shape how things work for us as well. Really.
Definitely. Hmm.
Yeah. We've got our final poll to share with you. Here it is, as if by magic. So we'd love to know from you what you might start prioritizing as a result of being here today. There is no right or wrong answer. We're just interested to know what's going on for you or what you might find helpful. Um, we have got our weight loss tracker that you can use. You can download the Boots Online weight loss tracker. We also have food and symptom diaries we can share with you. If there's anything, resources that you would like, please do let us know. We do have a lot of resources that you may or may not already have. And I can see that actually a lot of people are thinking that they want to build that daily structure and that consistency, which is great. It's a really good place to start, isn't it? Because I think, even if you set sort of waking up times, getting out of bed times, and the times that you're roughly going to be eating around your daily pattern, or when you're going to go to bed in the evening, even, it can just bring a sort of structure that could really help. So thank you for sharing that. We're going to go to your questions, and yes, I'm just really interested to know what's going on with you. And just to remind you, we will be back next week. And we have got webinars running over the next few weeks as well, all the way up to and around the Christmas period. So let's come to your questions. Um, thank you. So, Natasha, can you see the Q&A box okay? Shall I read the question out and then maybe if there's one you can answer, and if there's anything else that you would like or I can think of that we should say. So,
Sure.
this is a really great question and something I find really interesting. So somebody's asking in the Q&A box, so we'll try and keep this anonymous. How do you get your doctor to diagnose you for ADHD? Sorry, what am I saying? Mine won't give me any medication for it because I've not even been diagnosed with that. That's a great question, and I bet it's something that many people are already thinking about. So, Tasha, can you run us through? I know it's a really complicated answer, actually, isn't it? But
It's
can you
yeah,
run
it's
through?
been really tricky for people. I know people often end up waiting a really, really long time. I think there is a bit more access to private assessments now, and lots of people do go down that route. But if you want to go to your GP, probably the best way to do it is to ask for to seek it through Right to Choose, and that allows you to choose a provider. It will be the GP will have a list of providers that they're happy to use. And then they should put you forward for an assessment. So it's normally when local services are overwhelmed and there's long waiting lists, Right to Choose can be a way to access the assessment that you need.
Yeah, I think it seems to be that there's quite a backlog, isn't there, in terms
Mm.
of that whole getting diagnosed. And actually, you have to have a referral, don't you, to be seen and assessed. It's not something I believe that your GP can diagnose.
Your
You'd need
GP,
to.
yeah, no, you're quite right. The GP can't diagnose, but they can refer you for an assessment. But yeah, people typically have waited a long time. I think the Right to Choose is what's opening it up though at the moment.
Yeah, so that's helpful. Thank you. That's really helpful. It is quite a complex process, I believe. So, you just have to
Yes.
be,
Yeah, you need to be seen by a specialist to diagnose and then also to start medication. So a GP can't start the medication even if you go with the diagnosis. So you've still got to come through to specialist ADHD service. But I think it's slowly improving the access. I think we're thinking of ways, but it is very complex out there, and different trusts will also have different contracting arrangements. So it adds another layer.
yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. Sorry it's difficult for everyone who is in that
Mm.
situation. We really understand, don't we? Somebody's asking what to do if you have zero appetite. Is there some way you can get guidance on minimum requirements for micro and macronutrients? It's a great question. Um, the easy answer is to start, well, it's not particularly easy, but the easiest option is to look at your basal metabolic rate. And Raman, if you could share a link to calculating your basal metabolic rate, there's a very simple sort of link that we can share with you to how to do this. So that's the basal metabolic rate is your caloric requirements at rest. So if you were just lying in bed all day and you were just breathing and your body was just ticking over without any raw activity or, requirement for extra energy, then that is your basic requirement. You then need to add on a layer of multiplication based on your activity level. But this link that's just being shared now in the chat box will get you started. Now that is your basic calorie requirement. So it's really important to try and meet that as much as you possibly can, because otherwise you will feel very fatigued, your muscles will not be strong, and actually that can lead to that whole fatigue thing. And then, I think start by getting the macros right. When you've got those right, then you can start looking at the micronutrients. I think we can overwhelm ourselves if we're trying to do everything at once. So just start by eating, making sure you're getting those calories. And then when you're managing that, move on to the next step, because otherwise it's too much, too confusing. And I think that brings us nicely into that question that somebody is asking about the foods that create inflammation in your body. I hope you've got a pen, but it's quite a long list. I think we've got some information on the website about inflammation. I will check, Raman. I don't know if we've got any links of documents we can share, but my top inflammation triggering foods are going to be processed foods, number one. So the ultra processed foods, we know that they're incredibly difficult for our bodies to handle and will cause inflammation for many people. So we want to create as minimal of those. We want to be eating just natural foods as much as we possibly can. I think we all need to be realistic and live in the world that we're living in. And processed foods are probably part and parcel of most people's lives at some point in the day or in some point in the week, just because life is tricky. So, thinking about your processed foods, cutting those down, cutting sugar down as much as you possibly can really help in terms of that inflammatory response. And then things like the fats. So, fats become quite complicated. We want to be boosting the healthy fats. So, those are your essential fats that we were talking about just now. So, things like your oily fish, your avocados, your olive oil, your olives, your seeds, and your nuts, really great sources of healthy fats. Coconut oil counts as a healthy fat, even though it's saturated fat, unless you have a particular aversion to it for some reason. And then you want to be avoiding high levels of saturated fats from fried foods, which is where the processed foods come into this whole story as much as anything else. So, red meat is sort of something that we talk about. Is it good for us? Is it bad for us? I think we want to go for moderation with red meats. So that's how I would think about those inflammatory foods. And it's really worth thinking about where they're coming from. Maybe doing a food mood diary, just see what's going on in terms of your foods that you're eating regularly and whether you're sort of balancing things as much as you possibly can with the sort of vegetables and the sort of leaner proteins. So have a look. And we've shared some information about understanding dietary fats, which is great. I'd actually have forgotten that we'd written that. So good to know. Good. Cool. Somebody would like us to reshare the link to the sleep webinar. So can you do that if possible, Raman? Somebody's saying, Natasha, that making this and all you're mentioning is so overwhelming, and I have palpitations just thinking of yet more things to do. I'm really sorry we've overstimulated you. Natasha, what do we recommend? I think simplicity, but what
Yeah,
do you
I was
think?
just thinking that just keep it simple. Try not to give yourself a hard time with these things because we
Yeah.
know, in ADHD, it is these things often are very overwhelming and it's really difficult to think about and then even more difficult to actually do it. And that is where treatment can be so beneficial. And that's what we try to support in that. But yeah, just if in the absence of treatment, I think Ruth's right, just try and keep it simple and be sort of kind to yourself as well.
Yeah, it's really important. Maybe just make that list and then almost like make a separate list so that you don't have to keep looking at the overwhelming amount of things on your to come to list and just choose the one thing and almost maybe make a post-it note of that one thing that you're going to be focusing on and put that on your fridge or on a cupboard door or on the front of your diary or just wherever it isn't going to be too stimulating for you to keep seeing it, but serves as a gentle, constant reminder so that you literally just manage that one thing for now. Because I think it is about finding that one thing, isn't it? Whether it's sleep that you're really struggling with, whether it's a routine of eating regularly, whether it's that you're binging and eating because you're not eating in the morning, whether it's cravings, we all have one thing that's worth really putting that focus on, I would say. And so just keep it to that for now. And then you can always revisit the webinar if that information is helpful and then choose the next thing on your list. So yeah, yeah, I hope that's helpful. I'm sorry it's overwhelming.
Uh,
Somebody's saying that they go to bed late.
mm.
I feel that I go to bed late on the times when I live alone. Okay, any thoughts for that?
Um, I guess again, it's just about sort of trying to put a bit of a routine into place. People stay up late for all sorts of reasons. I think in ADHD, it's quite common to feel, we talked about before, maybe a bit of a night owl or you're a bit more awake at that time. But getting a good evening routine in place is probably the best thing you can do. And also, for getting your brain ready for sleep and increasing the right hormones like melatonin. and keeping away from screens as well. I know people really struggle with that, but actually switching things off, making sure that you get into bed at the right time, even if you don't feel, very, very sleepy, and just try and sort of do things to settle. Um, but yeah, sometimes when you live alone, you haven't got someone else to prompt you. It's a bit more challenging, isn't it?
Yeah, it's almost maybe you need to set an alarm somewhere
Mm,
to remind you to go to bed and almost like just make a commitment to yourself that that's the thing you're going to focus on for the next couple of weeks and just routinely do that. And equally, I think having a wake up time can really help that bedtime
mm,
work too. So, and then from a nutritional point of view, there are things like tart cherry juice can help the promotion of melatonin. And then kiwi fruit at bedtime have been found to actually
mm,
help be soothing. And then teas, so things like chamomile tea, valerian tea, sort of swapping to those in the afternoon, getting away from the caffeine after lunch can be really helpful just to create the environment in your body that is going to be finding sleep a little bit easier to achieve as well. So it's sort of layering in all of the things, isn't it?
mm. Sort of links in a little bit to this next question, actually, about what could be done instead of eating to create stimulation. And actually, the best thing you can do is exercise because that will naturally increase levels of dopamine. So that is the number one way that you can do that for yourself. And it links in with the sleep as well, because if you had enough exercise during the day, likely to feel a bit more restful in the evening and like it's a bit easier to settle. So that would be the number one thing. Otherwise, it's things that you enjoy. That's what increases dopamine in your brain. So if there are things that you really enjoy doing, then that's one of the other hopefully easy ways that you can do that.
Yeah, and like dopamine, you can almost just like from also just recognizing when you've achieved something and almost giving yourself a pat on your back or saying, "Oh, well done,"
Mm,
to yourself, or even just acknowledging that you've achieved that can boost your dopamine a little bit because reward, food acts as a reward. So it's sort of like a comfort, a reward. So we need to just try and replace the reward that we get from food.
mm,
So it's sort of like finding the things that bring reward. But I agree, I think movement and exercise, and if you can't move or can't do sort of like a significant workout, I think we often think about exercise when people talk about exercise, we almost feel like that means you've got to go to the gym. We're not talking about that. We're talking about just moving in life, putting on a pair of shoes, going outside in the air, getting daylight on your eyeballs. All of those things can help and just moving your body. There are loads of things that we can do at home to be active. And if you're struggling with pain, just use the parts of your body that are more able to move more easily without causing pain. I think we sort of like automatically, I know my brain automatically jumps to thinking exercise is all about being in the gym.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
so many nice things that you can do, and being outside as well is so good for our mental health. Also, helps sort of regulate everything, make people feel a little bit calmer. So I think that can be a really good thing to do. If you just tell yourself you're going to get out for 5 minutes and just walk for a bit,
Yeah,
can be
very much
helpful.
so. Okay, so somebody's put in quite a long comment. I think it is helpful because there may be other people here today who are feeling similarly.
Mm,
So I'll read this out and then we'll pick it and see what we can suggest. So somebody is saying they've been on Manjaro for just under a year. Recently coming off 4 weeks ago, so have just come off Manjaro and also newly diagnosed ADHD. So really struggling to come to terms with everything. That's a lot
mm,
going on in such a short window, isn't it? You're saying that you can't stop eating, you're taking an ADHD medication, and you're starving. And there's so much to process, and I keep losing control of my eating. Like, literally, I want to say thank you so much for your honesty and sharing that with us. I think it's really helpful for us to understand. I'm really sorry that you're going through this. It feels like a lot to process in one go. And from a nutrition point of view, I'd just say keep it really simple. Make a really basic plan that you can follow every day. Maybe choose two breakfasts, two lunches, and two dinners, and just do that for a while. Make sure you've nailed your protein. That's going to really help with that feeling of starvation. If we're not eating enough protein, we can be really, really hungry. And if we eat enough protein, it can make a huge difference to just balancing your blood sugars and getting those cravings a bit more under control. That's what I think from your perspective, Natasha. Really
I
helpful
think,
your thought.
yeah, it'd be really, really important to speak to your prescriber because they will be sort of used to supporting people with these sorts of difficulties, and probably there'll be something that can be done, to help you sort of adjust things, adjust the treatment maybe, because it's definitely something that we do consider. So yeah, please do that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Natasha. It's really helpful. I think, yeah, never be afraid to go back to your medication prescriber because they're the ones who can adjust things for you. Somebody's asking how they get access to the shared documents. We're sharing links, so if you in the chat box, the links are there too for you. All you do is click on the link, and it should then pop up as a document on your screen. Do let us know. There's also the 10-week weight loss program, which is on the Boots Online Doctor website, and most of the links, not quite all of them, because we are constantly making new material, but the majority of them are there. So, Raman, if you could share the link to the 10-week weight loss program, if you just simply go to that, or if for any reason you can't get onto that right now, just have a look at the 10-week weight loss program. And at the end of each week, there are resources, and then most of those resources that we've talked about today, you will find in those resource sections. So, hopefully, that will be helpful to you. Um, Great. So somebody's saying protein snacks are awesome if you're still hungry. What do you have? Do tell us, Lemon. We'd love to know what you're finding awesome. Somebody is saying they're beginning stimulant medication next week. Can you share any advice on whether there are any things that should be avoided other than caffeine and alcohol? Natasha,
Hmm.
anything?
Mainly it will be caffeine and alcohol, and obviously any illicit substances as well. We want all of those things to be avoided. But generally, I think just talk it through again with your prescriber, and they'll be able to advise. But no, there's nothing else sort of specific really that I would say we want you to avoid. Sometimes it seems like it's going to be hard giving up the caffeine, but then once you start the medication, it hopefully will stimulate your brain in a better way, and it shouldn't be so difficult.
Brilliant. That's really helpful. Thank you. Somebody's saying, is it normal for cravings compulsive behavior to spike in weeks following stopping a GLP-1? I'm not on ADHD medication either. I took my last dose at the end of September and feel out of control with overeating and other
Mm.
dopamine cravings like shopping.
Mm.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Um, I know physiologically when you stop taking a GLP-1 medication, it is very likely that you will notice an increase in your appetite. But I also know that when you stop being on a diet, which many people think about this as being on a diet, and what we want you to move away from is thinking about a diet phase and a non-diet phase. We want you to start learning some principles of how to turn up every day just in a consistent way. So we sort of just get that mindset about how do I support my health. So it isn't unusual to have an element of extra hunger. And if you haven't started introducing some of the mechanisms that can really help with hunger control, that could be part of the reason why you're feeling that way. And I would really recommend you just go back to the basics, get a meal planning document out, and start really thinking about how your meals look. Maybe keep the food and symptom diary for a while and see if there are any foods that when you eat them regularly, you're noticing those cravings are creeping in. Because I think sometimes if we can see the association for ourselves, it makes so much more sense. So try that and try really planning your meals so you've got those healthy fats, you've got the vegetables, and you've got the protein. It doesn't have to be pretty, it just has to be consistent and there really. And if you can do that with your 3 meals and even with a snack, try and get that balance there. See how you get on. Anything you would add, Natasha?
No, I think you covered that quite well.
Thank you. All righty. Somebody's saying they pressed a link and it started playing. Don't worry, we can't hear it, so we're fine. Probably a bit confusing for anyone who's done that. So, can you combine things like lion's mane? Oh, that's a really complex question. And I'm handing it straight to you, Asha. But if you don't know, we'll just say go back to your prescriber. So don't worry. But the question is, can we combine lines made with ADHD meds, or are these best avoided?
So when you start ADHD medication, we would normally ask that you stop things like lion's mane, just because we need to make sure that we can see what the effects and side effects are of the ADHD medication so that we can adjust it and get it right for you. Because some people do find that lion's mane can help with attention and concentration and focus a little bit. Some people will find it beneficial. So yes, we try not to mix them up. And also sometimes we're not sure what the interactions could be because sometimes these things are not very well researched at this point. So it's fine to take sort of normally, but normally we would ask that to be stopped. Um, and nutritional advice, a lot of my patients tell me that they find it really beneficial to increase their protein intake.
Yeah,
Um,
that all
so
goes back
yes.
to, yeah, I
Yeah, that
agree.
like and breakfast, I'd just like to add it's really important to have breakfast as well if you're taking a stimulant medication. It helps to keep side effects to a minimum and also it's just if you're not feeling hungry later, it's just going to help you sort of manage the day and your energy levels a bit better. So we always recommend that.
That's really helpful. Thank you. I totally agree with the protein. I think we totally underestimate how much protein we need, and you need to base it on your own personal body weight. So, your minimum protein requirement would be 1 gram per kilogram of body weight. So, if you weigh 60 kilograms, you would need 60 grams of protein. So you would want around 20 grams per 3 meals. So it's sort of like that doesn't sound too much, but then when you look at what brings 20 grams of protein, like 2 eggs, for example, is we've got a protein document that hopefully we've shared. So you can look and see quite easily how you would build that protein in. The 2 eggs would be like around 14 grams. So suddenly a 2 egg omelette isn't necessarily going to do it. Can you bring some more protein in there? Could you, what can you do to get that protein working for you? And if you weigh something like 80 kilograms, then you're going to need 80 grams of protein. That's your minimum. So it's really important to be thinking, okay, I'm not Mrs. Average. I don't have to do what everybody else is doing. I need to do what's right for me and keep it simple. Just make a list of the protein foods that you enjoy, that you're happy to eat, and make it as simple as you possibly can. Um, Carol's asking if pork is considered a red meat, and yes, it is absolutely considered a red meat. So thank you for that question. Becky is asking if it would be beneficial to track blood sugar using a device, or can you balance blood sugar without it? You absolutely don't need the device to help you balance your blood sugar. I think you need to learn to listen to your body and you need to recognize hunger and cravings. And also, like if you're, really struggling to sleep, or if you're feeling very overstimulated, what's going on? That may be a blood sugar factor that's triggering all of that. So really think about that. Maybe keep the food and symptom diary. It's free, it's easy to use, and just track what's going on for you in terms of your energy and your cravings and your hunger. Blood sugar management devices, those continuous glucose monitors that you can wear, there are a couple of companies that now sell them, can be really helpful if you're struggling with this and can give you that inside information that you might be struggling to identify. But I'd start with the free resources first. You might nail it that way. And if then that doesn't work, it might be worth considering. What do you think, Tasha, Natasha?
Um, yeah, I think probably all the things that you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, people find them helpful. I mean, I know someone was telling me that one of the things that they found raised their blood sugar more than anything was watching a scary movie and their blood sugar just went through the roof.
Hmm.
So actually, I think it is that it isn't just food that actually affects our physiology. It's the environment around us, whether we're too hot, too cold, whether we're stressed by what's going on with all of the building work next door, or, a scary movie, for example. Yeah, so it can be helpful. So it's worth just taking that down. Somebody's asking for the link to sign up for the webinars. I think we have done that. Have we shared the link for feedback, Raman? If not, can we? Somebody says they love scary movies. You might be one of those people that can sit there and be really chill, whereas the rest of us will be freaking out and our blood sugars will be going all over the place. Here is a link for signing up for the next movies. I think that we have answered probably all of your questions. So thank you so much as well for your time, everyone, today. Thank you so much. Last thoughts from you, Natasha. Um, it's been really interesting. Thank you so much for your time. It's been
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been really nice and really interesting hearing what people are having to say and the questions that people are asking. I do wish everyone really well on your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for honesty as well. It's really helpful for us to know what's going on for you. So thank you. We are here next week and we will be sending you a link, hopefully later on in the next couple of days, for a replay of today's webinar. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thanks, everyone. And if you have an opportunity to fill in the online form, we've just sent a link out in the chat box. Capturing some of that feedback would be really helpful for us as well. So thank you. Thanks for your time and take care. Bye, everyone.